we're going to talk about Microsoft 365, B2B, shared channels, just essentially letting people into your organization and making sure that you're doing it in the best way that you can and safely. And one thing I just realized, I didn't put an introduction slide in here, but my name is Stacy Deere. I am a Microsoft Office and Apps MVP, and I own a business called Focal Point Solutions out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Been in business for almost 12 years now, so yay. So to jump in here, so what is B2B? So B2B has always been business to business, but in this realm, we're talking about features and capabilities with Microsoft that allows you to, not knowingly be safe when you're talking to your internal users, but also external clients and vendors and all that. It's been here for a while. You talk about hacking and safety and phishing and all this kind of stuff. And there's multitudes of things that you can do to help your organization. I feel finally with B2B that it gives me that little extra help in ensuring that my external users and my company is more safe. So I hope that you guys kind of see that as well. For me, it just finally has taken it over that edge. So with that, it increases, it enhances the security that you already have within your organization. It's really securing those external users to access in your organization. If you've ever dealt with a lot of guest users, I have a number of clients that we do quarterly maintenance for every quarter. And one of the reports we run is on guest users. And unfortunately, I have had way too many experiences where there's thousands and thousands and thousands of guest users in the environment. But when we start digging deep into it, most of these users haven't been in the tenant in years or months, never accepted their invitation, have access to no groups. They're just sitting out there, which is a security risk. I had, just give you some ballpark numbers, had a client that had over 24,000 guest users within their organization. And once we cleaned it up, they only had 172 that were valid. So not only is it important, just there's a time and a place for guest users and doing that type of stuff, but you always have to remember to find a solution that you also have to maintain and clean up as well. So, with the B2B, it helps you maintain proper control and management over your internal data. You also get the ability, and I'm going to show you the team's shared channels today as well. That gives you direct access into those, collaboration and access to the resources you want to share and ensure that's all you're sharing. And then, of course, when you're doing those things and you're putting those mixes together, it's going to increase productivity when, you can easily allow in a vendor or client and you don't have to go through the big, long red tape when you've already taken care of that. The one thing that I really love about it is it eliminates the need to swap accounts in the tenant. I know Microsoft has done a great job of, helping us move from like profile to profile, logging in from one tenant to the next. But this is that huge leap. One of the things I probably love about it the most. Again, it kind of keeps you, reinforce your compliance by managing all your external users and how they're interacting with your data, your services, and your users. So B2B external users versus guest users. So B2B guest users, they use their own credentials. So whatever company that, that they work for, which is a huge thing for me as well, because, you don't have to maintain that or anything like that. Same thing with a guest user, but one of the big differences here is with B2B, and to configure B2B, both companies have to be in a Microsoft 365 tenant, okay, to where if you're a guest user, you could use a Yahoo, Gmail, etc. So, but for a true external, this is for B2B, it's the actual Microsoft tenant to tenant. Your external identity provider manages the authentication and the life cycle. They do not need an intra ID record within your environment, so you don't have to see any of that. You can invite users to teams and shared channels. and has a member level access to those shared channels, which I'll show you as well on that. For the guest users, you have to be invited. So this is the normal guest users. When you go into Intra, you can invite the user, or depending on your settings within your organization, your users can go into Teams or SharePoint and add a user from within there as well. It sends them out an email with that invite. Those accounts, like I said, can be like Yahoo, Gmail, etc., but they must be Microsoft Live associated. And access is designated to Teams or SharePoint at a top level. So one of the really great things about the shared channels is they don't have to have access to the main team as well. So you can do this just, when it comes to the guest user, they have to have this level, then the next level, and the next level before you can, to share all the information. So a lot of permissions out there, and permissions they probably don't need, but they don't have a choice but to have it. Okay. So B2B collaboration versus a direct connect. And I kind of add in like the B2B collaboration is really a external guest user, for the sake of not really making it confusing, but you know how Microsoft names things. The external guest user signs in to the tenant with the email address that they have, that they used when they signed up for the invite. Their access is designed by the permissions that they were directly assigned, and the external guest users are able to participate in any of the shared channels of the team that they've been given permissions to. And for the collaboration side, you can add any external user account with any domain. So again, like that true guest user piece of it. But the difference is with the collaboration versus more the direct connect and collaboration, you can have, I'm going to say it wrong now. Watch. I've been practicing this one because this was where it gets a little fuzzy. For the external guest user, it has to be a Microsoft 365 account, but this is more like vetting a domain. So if you were going to vet Focal Point Solutions domain, or vet gmail.com, like you're vetting the domain, but you still have to actually invite the users, which is very much like what you do now with just guest users, but you're not vetting the domain. To where Direct Connect, not are you, the domain is solid, you're vetting that domain, but you're also vetting the users all at the same time. So when you say, I want that direct connection, it means I don't care who you are within the company. If you're in that directory for that organization and I'm connected to you, you're good to go. So you don't have to do anything else. Using the company's email and password. Again, you can, you get permissions to all the designated areas that you allow. But the big difference is you don't need any account within Microsoft Intra. Now, one of the things with B2B is one of my favorite things. I have a number of companies getting ready to do this as well, is when you're doing the B2B connection, notice how we say you don't have to have your accounts in the directory. But if you work for a company that has multiple entities, say you have they have a North America, Japan, Mexico, etc. They're technically the same company, but they're run on their own Microsoft 365 tenant. What you can actually do is in the B2B configuration, actually configure it so you can share those accounts. So you sync them across so that you can see their users and they can see yours. So it really helps build that connection with if you have companies that have multiple entities. So one of the main things that you need for the configuration is the actual tenant ID. So when you're doing these configurations, it has to be with someone who has the appropriate access inside of the Microsoft 365 tenant. Global admin will have it. And there's a number of roles that you could do. You know how Microsoft's got 50 million roles. But essentially, I have some screenshots here where you do that. But just to show you, if you go into the admin center, if you go to identity here, And then here, just on the main screen here, you'll actually see where your tenant ID is there, okay? Pretty easy to find that. So based off of that, once you go into actually setting up your tenant ID, so you're both going to get it, you're going to work together, you're both going to agree to put it in the organization. One of the things that I have done with a number of companies that are looking to go to this is there should be some type of paperwork. Compliance regulations of the company should be shared, what you allow, what you don't allow, and what types of content people should have access to or not have access to. Just having those general instructions and guidelines would be very big. So that is something I do kind of work on with them as well. There is an inbound and outbound configuration. And the biggest thing is you could have two different configurations between the two companies. However, if the configurations don't match, you will not have full functionality. What we found to this point, whichever one is essentially configured the lower level, that's pretty much as high as you can get with some of them, just because they have to match to be able to do all the same things. So it's very important to, like I say, work together to make sure that you're doing the same configuration across board. Okay. All right, so we'll just go down here and show this a little bit here. So once you're in the actual tenant and you go down here to external identities, you will see, there we go, to the overview here, and you can see cross-tenant access right here, okay? So this is where you're going to set up the actual, do the connection. So notice I have a connection to my other tenant in here, but essentially all you do is add organization, and you're going to add the tenant ID here, and you're going to hit add. And literally you just made your first connection with the other organization. So then notice down here, you'll see the organization name, inbound access, outbound, and tenant restrictions. So this is essentially where you will go and do any of those additional configuration needs for like inbound. You click on that, going to come up, keep circling. There we go, that one's coming up. All right, so notice here's the B2B collaboration piece of it. And notice you can do customize, you can say for users and groups, you can allow or block, and you can say applies to. Notice this currently says all focal point users, but if you notice, I could do very select users or groups as well. And then I can also state what applications, so allow or block, and then I say all applications, or I can select certain applications. And notice I can add Microsoft, or I could add others. And if you just select them, then you kind of get the list over here of the different applications that you can add. And then up here you have, then you have the B2B direct connect as well. So this is where you wouldn't have to have the users inside of your tenant or anything like that. Again, same exact settings, default settings, custom settings. You can do everybody or the group or external access and lock that down as well. So notice here in this one for my direct connect, because I am connected over to my other tenant, I used custom settings and I did allow, and notice I went down here and just chose all of Office 365 to share across. Okay. And then you also have over here trust settings. So this is where you can just set it to automatically redeem any invitations from within the Focal Point Solutions tenant, the one I'm connected to. It's just one of the where you can set up the trust. So the configuration is not real difficult. It's just making sure that you're, talking to each other and making sure that you're setting the correct information across both sides. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. And I did put the slides out here. So like kind of like the order of going through and setting these up. and I can provide these slides as well. So by doing these things that you now can do, so you can really enforce multi-factor authentication with the guest users, the B2B, all of that. You have the ability to use conditional access to control them. You have more audit logging of people who are logging into your environment. You get different types of information on that, which to me is huge. Compliance. You have a number of compliance areas now that these users can be integrated with, like e-discovery, data loss prevention. They can all, the information, you can get it across the board at this point. Integrate with user and group object IDs, more geared towards company entities, deal with that piece of it. And then, of course, integrate applications, again, across different the different companies, entities, and all that stuff so that you can share across to make communication and working together a lot easier. Right now, one of the companies that recently deployed this about 2 months ago, when we started looking at it for them, they actually had 4 different entities. They had different applications, users, and now that they've integrated all this stuff, we actually just had what we call our quarterly follow-up meeting with them. And they said the integration and putting this stuff together has trimmed off so many hours worth of work. And then the fact that they don't have to have the guest users and maintaining that, they said life has just become a lot easier for them. So if you're dealing with a lot of shared apps and users and all that kind of stuff, different groups and permissioning, definitely the place to go. Here's some additional settings around, this just shows a number of them that I have set out here, but just kind of a overview of the different types. The B2B collaboration apply to internal, external. This is just from the configuration I created up here. B2B and shared channels. For me, for the longest time, I told everybody the only reason B2B exists is for shared channels, because that's the part I love the most when it comes to this. I love to share information with my clients, but I always fear the security side of it because I'm a huge security person as well. So one of my biggest things was I would love to be able to keep things within a team, but really know that no one on my team or someone I've given access to something shares something to the other organization that they really don't mean to. And even though I run a consulting company and everybody on my team are IT geeks, everybody can make a mistake. I've ran various reports in my own tenant, and I've found where people have done sharing links that shouldn't have done sharing links and broken permissions and all this kind of stuff. So I love my team, but everybody can make mistakes. So I always just wanted that sure thing, essentially. And I really feel like I have it when it comes to the shared channels of sharing information externally to another client with a Microsoft 365 environment as well. So the collaboration with that client and vendor, again, just becomes so much more, it becomes very easy. I've had less issues configuring this and having communications with a client than I did, just setting up another site, setting up external sharing and whatnot. I don't have to update, they update their Active Directory. Someone leaves the company, that's automatically gone. I don't have to worry about that. And granting access to just a shared channel, not the entire team, for me is the huge thing. The one thing to keep in mind is Microsoft, with a lot of the documentation, which was a little hairy in the beginning of doing these configurations, because in some of the documents, they would call the same thing, an external user and a guest user, but then you technically have something called an external guest user. So it was a little confusing at first until you start really using it, and then it kind of irons out for you. And I'll show you kind of what I mean there. So I'm going to go through and create a shared channel here and show you what this does. There we go. All right, so these are just some random teams I have out here. So I'm just going to go and create a shared channel under Stacy's holiday management. So we're going to first look at people I have out here. So right now I am the only person that has access out here, and this is my account. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to do add a channel. I'm going to call it holiday sharing. We'll stay in the sharing theme here. All right. Then my options down here, I'm going to choose shared. Notice it says people you choose from your org or other orgs have access. All right. Here, notice I can say share this channel with everyone on my team, on the team, if I wanted to, meaning if whoever's got access to the high level, I can give them access to this as well. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to unselect that and I'm going to hit create. So now I'm getting a shared channel created. Right now it's asking me who to want to add to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose somebody that I know that is at another, on the other side. So I'm just going to choose, I'm going to pick on Ryan. So I'm just going to type and notice he pops up. Notice this is our love at focalpointsolutions.co. So he's technically in the other tenant, but also notice he shows up as an external user. Okay. And then I can hit share. I can change him, or notice I can't change him to an owner because he is an external. And then if I hit done, and now he is added into the sharing channel. Also notice you have this little icon here that helps you identify that this is a shared channel. Okay, so now notice here, manage team, there's no Ryan here. Okay, but if I go here, I have Ryan here. So I can continue to talk with my entire team, share confidential information and all that stuff underneath this shared channel, and everybody be completely different underneath this holiday sharing channel so that that client cannot get into the general or anything like that. And I have it all my content nicely wrapped up for this particular client right here. And I just know that this has external users in it. All right, and I put all the pictures out here so you guys can easily create them. All right, we're down here. All right. Oh, that's what it was. I was like, what the heck? Okay, so the other way, so like we just did that through Teams. There is another way that you can actually share permissions as well. So if you go to a SharePoint site and you notice up here you have a shared channel, it actually, if you open up the site, it will say you can't do it here. You actually have to manage this through Teams. You do not have the option to manage it through the site itself. So like if I go to here, my SharePoint thing. Come up. Is it not going to come up? All right, maybe I'm going to have to do it this way. Well, I used to have my SharePoint icon up there, but if I go this way, here, we'll make it give it to me another way. How's that? SharePoint. They probably took it away because of exactly what I'm getting ready to show, but I just showed that the other day. Right, now my search isn't going to work. Come on. All right, so we'll go here. So here's that shared channel. If I open this, okay, notice it shows that's team. It's a team and it's a shared channel. Then if I go to site permissions, it tells me I cannot do it here. I have none of the options. Now I can see who's in these groups, but I cannot actually add anybody. They force you actually to go to Teams to do the configuration. Questions? You guys just being nice? All right. So one of my biggest things with the B2B, even though I love so many things about this, there's not a lot of reporting on this at this time. So typically, like if you go into the actual, if you're in Azure up here, if you wanted to see a guest user, it's rather easy. But the fact that these aren't technically guest users, you don't have a way to currently find them. So if I'm here and if I add a filter for user type and equals, notice here, I don't have anything about an external user, but I do have a guest user. Here's my guest users, but I don't have a way currently to see any of the users that are using any of the B2B Connect. One of the things that we have learned is that we can run some PowerShell looking for the things that we know we can find, and then, or excluding the things that we know we can find. And then we know that the remainder of them are essentially those external users using B2B. My hope, and maybe Michelle knows, I don't know, but my hope would be, because of the fact that this is becoming a lot more, more people are starting to use it, that eventually we'll be able to identify the users in here and we wouldn't have to use PowerShell. But I also know that there is a company called Orchestry, because I was just talking to them about a week or so ago, and they actually are going to be including it with their guest user reports as well. But other than that, we've not found a really good way to help identify bringing in, who's an external user and using the B2B Connect pieces. Any questions?
Hey, Stacy,
Michelle.
there are a couple questions that are in the chat, but I know you're on one screen, so
Yes.
very difficult to.
Yes.
But Jason Fowkes asked a question, going back a little bit. Would B2B allow on Viva Engage for two separate tenants to treat users to be the same as tenant users on a remote tenant for the purpose allowing them be admins for Viva Engage communities? So it sounds like they want to have somebody outside of their tenant to be a Viva Engage owner.
No,
manager.
right now you can only add them as a member.
All right, so not quite yet, Jason.
Yeah, not quite yet.
Another Jason Hughes, longtime member of the group. Couple things he has questions on. Our users get confused about three main things when it comes to different channels.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't really designed to be configured with granular permissions like a SharePoint communication site, right?
Right.
Capabilities. Adding owners versus members versus guests versus teams, and how all those options aren't supported in all three types of channels. Yep, big time.
Yes.
And then for members to see files in shared channel, the files need to live in the shared channel. You can't just share Teams files with that channel.
In the shared, yes.
Yep. So
yes.
All relevant points, Jason.
Yeah.
Yes. Those are some of the issues with that shared channel capability.
Yes, those are 100%. So like I said, I like it from the security aspect, not that it's perfect by no stretch of the imagination, but I am with you on the security, especially like when you mentioned communication sites, and I kind of knew where you were going, because communication sites, when you look at the permissions around a communication site, they're very much identical to what we had in Classic, right? So there's no group, none of that kind of stuff. But when you start dealing with the group sites and all that, you have, you don't have you don't have a visitors group. You have your members and your owners, and none of it is consistent for, for some of these channels and stuff. So I'm with you on some of that.
Yeah.
I'm totally with you. Right. I actually did pull it up on my phone to help see these. If you have time, can you give an example how a managed service provider would use this? So interestingly enough, Or you're talking about like if you're supporting another, if you're supporting clients, is that kind of the question? Making sure I get the right managed service provider. So
And
like
this is,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. I think that's the case. I think that's where he's
Okay.
coming from.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's the right one. So like so I have a number of clients that we actually are managed service providers for. Um, And so essentially all we're using it for at this time is that's just how we're communicating and sharing files back and forth. We also do, for some of these clients, we do like quarterly maintenance, or we run certain reports for them, or we're doing builds, and we just share everything through that, through the site, through that shared channel and everything, so that they have it, we have it. We don't have to swap tenants. That's the biggest thing for us, because like we have accounts on theirs and all that, and we would have to swap and go in and log in and put it there. In this case, we don't have to do any of that. So it essentially just saves us some time. And the cool thing is when we run some of like our PowerShell reports and all that kind of stuff, we just have it go straight into that shared channel. So it kind of saves us time on certain things that we do for our clients. I do have some clients where we just do just normal projects and we don't have all that. And I haven't found the need to connect to them, but ones that we do a lot more work with and we're doing automated things for them and quarterly maintenance, it just makes it so much easier. I've noticed also the missing open and SPI. That was just there the other day. So the fact that I'm glad that you said you saw it too, because I was like, it was just there the other day. And I'm wondering, just because of the fact that they, you go to the site, you just can't do permissions there, if they thought that was a good thing. I still have a ton of users, or well, I should say clients, that have users that, do I use the SharePoint site or do I use Teams? And unfortunately, I always just give them that answer that it depends. Some people, if they're, like I made the comment, things I do every day, there are many, many days that I'm just stuck in the browser all day, and it just makes whatever my next task is, it just makes it just as easy to stay there. But then there are days, and others on my team, that they never are in the browser. They're always in using Teams. So it very much depends, but it would just be nice for them. They give us the error message essentially that you can't manage permissions inside that site, but you would think that they'd still give us access to get to the site. So I find that very weird that they took it away.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Oh,
if
look.
you go to files, you should be able
Yeah.
to see open in SharePoint. That's
Yeah,
what
they
I
have it here.
normally do.
Yeah. So it used to be if you just were on the posts or anything, it would be up here in this drop down, and they got rid of it, but it is still here in the files.
Yep. And you're going to always see it in the files no matter what channel you're on.
Yeah. Yeah. But that is weird that they moved. I mean, because literally the other day it was up here. And I was like, where'd that go? All right. Next one. Is B2B only driving Teams in SharePoint, does it drive the ability to share Power BI reports with external users? That's a good question. I have not tried to share a Power BI report, but if I think about it, publish it to Michelle. Maybe you might know, if they publish the Power BI into the shared channel, then the external person would be able to see it, right? They wouldn't be blocked.
Right.
Yeah, they should be able to see it just fine. I can't see a reason why they wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, think about it like this. If they're a part of the M365 group and they are a member, then they should be able to see that tab.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to. So, this one, we have a lot of users that were originally created as guests, and then we learned about B2B more recently. They now come through B2B external. So now we have people with both guest and external. And we've been hesitant to delete the guests because of teams. They were just added to previously with a guest account. Do you have any suggestion on how to clean this up? Messy situation. Biggest complaint. Interesting enough, just got off a call last Monday in regards to this. One of the clients I said that had the different entities and all that. They had their users and there's guests, and they're like, how do we clean this up? How do we figure out where they're at? In their case, essentially what we did is we actually used the reports that we use for quarterly maintenance, which actually it's two different reports. It goes out and pulls one and then the other, and then we kind of combine them together, which gives you all the guest users last time they logged in, what they actually have access to, and then we use that to cross-reference so that they, any of it that was just junk, they were able to get rid of, and then the ones that were valid, then they cross-referenced with the companies that they just did the whole external access with to help clean those up. And I'd be glad to share those PowerShell scripts with you if you would like. Just let me know.
Stacy, there was one, I think you jumped over accidentally. Is B2B Direct Connect only available for shared channels at this point? Do you know if Microsoft plans to use it for anything else in the future?
It is only for that right now, and I'm not 100% sure if they plan on using it for other things, but I would have to imagine that there's something in the works, because I can't imagine that's the only thing it's going to be used for. Otherwise, seems like a lot of work for one little thing.
Yeah, and I'll concur and say initially we rolled it out to first set up shared channels. I think there's more in the works. I think everybody this week, take a look at Ignite. I don't know if we're going to be announcing anything, but that will be definitely where any of the further development in cross-tenant access settings will be announced.
Yeah, just with the nature of it. I mean, there's a lot of work that went into that. It has to be more somewhere. So I will be looking out for that for sure. All right. Did I skip any others?
No, I think and Sean said, can you share PowerShell code you may have, which generates the B2B usage reports, unless you're going to talk about them. Yep.
Yeah, I can supply those. So I can supply those.
Perfect. That's it.
Dang, I'm sorry. This is my first time giving this. I would have thought it would last me an hour.
This is such an important topic. So I love that you were able to kind of outline what are the differences. Fantastic stuff. I think the big win here is that you're going to provide the PowerShell report because that's what everybody really cares about. Like, how do I clean my Azure Active or my Entra, directory? So.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. Like, that one client, they came back and like we got them all set up and they were so stoked because they've been struggling for so many years with these different entities. And it was very clear to see why, especially when I saw their guest users. And then when they came back and says, how do I clean this up? I'm like, thank God we created that for quarterly maintenance, because for me, guest users was becoming a huge issue. We had a client that got hacked, not because of guest users, but because they got hacked, they asked me to do a huge deep dive into their environment. And they didn't have the 24,000, but they had, for a company that only had 600 people and they had like 1,800 guest accounts, did some deep diving, and they only had 52 active accounts out there. But they had a lot of Gmail, a lot of Hotmail, and all these different kinds of things. And most of the companies they deal with are all Microsoft 365 and all this kind of stuff. But their guest users were all over the place. A lot of them, they were created but never ever used. And so it really got me into thinking, I was like, we need to bring it to people's attention. And that's essentially why we end up creating the PowerShell commands. And now it seems like it'll help them clean it up even further. I did get one client that was really lucky that also had the multiple entities. And I'm not a big like push third party person at all because, to each their own, there's a lot of things you can just do on your own. But they got lucky that they actually had purchased Orchestry because of the guest user stuff, because they actually had gotten hacked because of some guest user had some things that were going on. And they said that when they pulled it, it shows you up what's active, but then you can select them as a whole and then clean them up all immediately, which was pretty nice. I said that would be sweet. So I know that there's tools out there like that can help you clean those up. But like I said, not much you can't do within PowerShell. So
perfect. Looks like McKinley Anderson also had a question, and it was more about there's confusion out there about the difference between B2B or cross-tenant sync. Which is better? It seems like my initial testing that cross-tenant sync is essentially just guests. They still have to switch tenants to chat. Is that true, or am I missing something? Jason Hughes, thank you for throwing that information in there. That should help a little bit, McKinley. But Stacy, I don't know if you have any words of wisdom on that.
Which is better? I mean, so if you're syncing them across, I guess it depends on, I mean, I'm sure there's a scenario there, right? But with B2B, I've not had to swap between tenants at all to do anything that I've been doing. And of course, if I have to, unless it's you don't have the app. So if how when I talked about when you're in the configuration and there's the apps that you can allow, maybe something in one of those that is prohibiting you from doing that, which is why you may be having to swap, possibly. So I would definitely look at that, like in the applications area. So like for the direct connect, so like this one for applications, how it says like Office 365. So, but then the cross sync. Switch tends to chat. The chat pieces got me. Why would you be prompted to swap for chat?
Yeah, so I can add a little more light on that. So we just started doing cross-tenant sync with a couple organizations. We had been doing B2B for everything, and then I honestly don't know why we started doing cross-tenant sync with a couple things, but they started to, and what I've noticed so far is with the B2B, when you search the person, you can find the external and chat. When you're doing cross-tenant sync, it doesn't show up like what guest by their name, like to show it's truly guest. It looks like external, but when you do chat with that basically user that's coming through via the cross-tenant sync, it is acting like a guest account, because when they choose to chat with my cross-tenant sync account, it prompts me to then say, hey, so-and-so's chatting with you in this tenant, and then I have to go through and switch and then find their chat, versus like the true B2B external, it like comes through in my normal domain and it's just amongst all my coworkers and whatnot. And so I more so was just curious because I don't know what their whole business reason was for doing the cross-tenant sync, but it seems to me like we're reverting back to our old ways of just doing a whole bunch of guest accounts where we have to switch tenants.
Yeah, because so I was just sitting here thinking of the client that I was working with cross sync just not that long ago, that when we were sending messages, I came up and it was told me that it wasn't an external guest, right? And if I approve or decline it, if I approved it, then I could chat with them. But you don't even get that. It's just prompting you to swap tenants, right?
Yeah, I've gotten that for like the B2B external chat. Like for the first chat, it'll come through and say, hey, this person's external. Are you sure you want to chat? But the cross-tenant sync, it doesn't. And like I said, we just started using it. I haven't researched it all, so I was just curious. Maybe there's like a setting configuration that we have to turn on to allow that. I'm not sure. Teams 2.0, I still have to switch tenants.
So you do not have Doesn't Teamsman make it so you do not have to? And are you using the new teams or the old teams?
New teams.
You're using the new teams.
Yeah, so I have to
Which
go
is
like
what
up
I'm
to my
using.
profile picture in the top right or
Yeah.
whatever and click my other organization account. And then I get the chats.
So McKinley, I've got some tenants set up like this with the cross sync. Do you mind if I do some testing on this and I can get back to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I've emailed you before, so you should have my email.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me do some testing in those tenants and let me see what I come up with. Okay.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Anytime.
And you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, you shouldn't
switch tenants. I mean, if I was going to answer this, I would certainly say the piece and the value around cross-tenant access settings is the ability to allow collaboration without having to switch the tenant, which is maybe more of an end user experience, but certainly administratively not having that user in your directory service is also another benefit.
Yeah, it's weird that they're getting that for sure. So, all right, I will figure it out though. So I'll see what I can find out and let you know. All right, any other questions?
I don't think so.
Yay.
Perfect. Thanks, Stacy.
Oh, no problem. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm going to hang out and listen to Michelle.
Of course.